Can you hear me? Yeah, I can't hear you though. I tested my speakers. Everything's fine on my end. I don't know. Can you hear me? Yep. I can phone up on my sign language if you'd like. Yeah, right side. Start telling the story. I see the banner. Sounds like a movie. 3 words. All right. Well, I'll. I've been instructed by the by Debbie to just kind of get going and start kind of highlighting. I think the key topics you wanted to discuss today had to do with the Eric Coomer versus Mike Lindell trial that wrapped up yesterday, and there's a lot of discussion around that. Obviously, just for you guys' edification, I actually work as the chief operating officer for Lindell Management, which is one of Mike's companies. My focus has always been on the elections and helping Mike get the truth out regarding what's happening to our elections. We were heartened in some ways and disheartened in some other ways regarding what happened yesterday in the jury trial. And the encouraging part of the trial, which is where my friend Mike likes to focus and where I'll focus as well, is the fact that MyPillow was found completely innocent of all charges that were levied by Eric Coomer. Now, just so you guys know, Eric Coomer is a former Grand Poobah out at Dominion. He was a head of security and one of their chief designers for their electronic voting systems. And he filed a lawsuit against Mike for defamation. And he didn't just charge Mike, he charged MyPillow and he charged Frank Speech, which is Mike's media arm. It's now Mike has a new media arm called Lindell TV, and that's because he's censored all the time. So he has to get the word out somehow. And, you know, the way Mike works is that if somebody wants to block him, he'll go around them and get out the message one way or another. So so what happened in the trial was, number one, MyPillow was exonerated of all charges. And then number two, important to many of the folks listening here, including myself, is that Mike Lindell himself, they originally wanted $60-some million in damages against Mike, and they ended up getting damages around $440,000 for what they cited as 2 incidents of defamation against Eric Coomer. And the first incident was Mike just repeating what somebody else was talking to him about on a Frank Speech broadcast back on May 9th of 2021. And the second time, which is weird, I don't understand how he gets defamation on this, was the day after Eric Coomer sued Mike Lindell for that one statement that he had back in May 9th, which nobody even knew. I can tell you, Mike wouldn't know, up until this trial at least, Mike couldn't pick Eric Coomer out of a lineup. He had no idea who he was. And, typically when you start talking about a defamation case, there's usually a little bit of famation. I mean, in other words, a person typically has some sort of fame associated with them. So it's tough to defame somebody that you had no idea who they were. But nevertheless, that's the case that was made to the jury. And then there was also 3 charges that were brought up against Frank Speech, the same 2 that dealt with Mike earlier, because he communicated a lot of those concerns via Frank Speech, and then another one that was introduced by Professor David Clements, which is kind of strange. Ultimately, since the beginning, Mike was talking about this as a case for free speech, and to the extent that the damages were reduced significantly for Mike from $64 million to $440,000, I think the jury recognized that to a certain extent. But from my perspective, it was pretty clear, and I was helping Mike's lawyers during this trial, because a lot of the claims that were made by Eric Coomer dealt with the 2020 election. And so I had provided a lot of information, a lot of data, evidence that I've had collected, not just from Michigan, but from all across the country in support of Mike. And we had a pretty good case to make on that. Mike's lawyers chose to focus, justifiably so, on the defamation charges against Mike. And that's where the trial went from a defense perspective. So as much as I would have liked to have made this a trial about the 2020 election, as much as Mike Lindell would have liked to have made this a trial about the 2020 election, it was not. It was a lawsuit regarding the defamation of Eric Coomer. And I'll tell you, just to show you how flimsy this case was, and it never should have been given the light of day in the first place, is that I went through the original filing, and you guys can do this too if you go out to the Colorado District Court, the federal court system out in Colorado, and look for Coomer v. Lindell. And if you look up the original filing, there's over 150 citations of evidence, if you will, in that filing by Eric Coomer. Only one out of 150 citations of evidence had anything to do with Mike saying anything derogatory at all towards Eric Coomer. One. So all the rest of it dealt with the 2020 election. And in case you're wondering, I'm one of those that made the case and still makes the case and still attests to the fact that the 2020 election was stolen. And unfortunately, we provided a lot of evidence to the folks up in Lansing at the time. They weren't listening. Thankfully, now we have some good folks out at the Michigan House in particular that are paying attention, and they're taking very good action. But one of the actions that has a Michigan connection to this lawsuit in Coomer v. Lindell, when they were citing all this quote unquote evidence of election impropriety, there's kind of a common denominator here that I've seen in a lot of lawsuits filed all across the country. And they were referencing this Michigan Senate report. And that was put forward by Senator McBroom, Senator Lana Tice, and Senator John Bison. And it was the most unprofessional report I've ever read in my life. And I don't know if to this day if they realize how irresponsible that report was. I mean, there's actual evidence that they said that they had subpoenaed, but they never actually even looked at the evidence. And we know that because the lawyer from the city of Livonia said, yeah, you know, they subpoenaed the machine data, but they never came over and got it from us. So these guys said that they performed an exhaustive investigation and then came to this spurious conclusion that there's no widespread evidence of election fraud. Well, they did a very big disservice to not just citizens in Michigan, but all across the country, frankly, with that Michigan Senate report. It keeps popping up in every single lawsuit because it was Republicans saying that there was no evidence of widespread election fraud. Well, thankfully, I've been working with some of the state reps and also Attorney Stephanie Lambert and Sheriff Dara Leaf. We've got evidence in Dominion internal emails that reveal that a lot of the testimony that served as a basis for that flawed Michigan Senate report actually was trusting that the assertions made by Dominion CEO John Polis, who was under oath testifying before the Michigan Senate Oversight Committee with Senator McBroom chair, and he testified under oath with legal counsel present. And based on the information that I have now, hey, I'm starting to hear some sound.
Now I got
I gotcha. So I've got a little bit of the reverb, but
let me.
So not only can I hear you once, now I can hear you twice. You have to mute one of the feeds.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you twice, or 3 times, 4 times.
Well, let me start.
Part of it could be.
All right. How does that work?
I'm going to turn you down on my side, so maybe I'll cut down.
Hold on. Let's see if this works. All right. Let me get out of here. Hold on. I think
Folks,
I might
just
check
making sure if you don't get it the first time, you'll get it the second or third or fourth time.
I don't quit. All right.
I see 2 feeds from you, so you're probably getting feedback because one of them's not muted. That's the wrong one to mute.
How about now?
That's good.
You can hear me?
I think I can hear you, and I can hear you once. So,
Ha! Double ha to anybody that doubted this.
all right.
I haven't
Next,
used the mic from my phone though, so.
well, the next job for you is to go off and troubleshoot our electronic voting systems. Now that you're a techie.
Right, right.
So I was just talking about that. We've got evidence of that John Polis, in his testimony that formed the basis of that Michigan Senate report, committed at least 15 counts of perjury during that testimony. And, the state of Michigan refused to investigate it, although Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel said that she had conducted a thorough examination of the evidence, which was, by the way, a 51-page submittal. And she engaged in a thorough investigation over 5 business days of that 51 pages. So I'm sure she, obviously, I don't think she did that. And in support of that assertion that she did not do any thorough investigation, I issued FOIA requests afterwards and asked her for a copy of the report that she issued, because she did such a great job doing that thorough investigation of our complaint of perjury that I'm sure she has some that she wanted to crow about in a report. Well, there is no report. Furthermore, when I FOIA'd all the communications regarding the complaint that was filed, there was no discussion of any investigation at all. It was all about how do you respond to this criminal complaint that was filed in the media. And so obviously we're being lied to. And so even though the state didn't do something about it, I can tell you I've gotten it to some influential individuals in Washington, D.C. So now we have a federal avenue available to us that was not available before. So, and all this is tying back to that lawsuit, because it's all a regurgitation of all the same nonsense and balderdash that we've been subject to in all these lawsuits. And that didn't play a huge factor in this trial, except that now with the court transcripts, all that information that we had to rebut a lot of these assertions is now a matter of the public record.
Wow. So is there an appeal process that Mike gets to go through from this point on?
Well, he's going to go through an appeal, and frankly, right now he's got to raise some money for the appeal, because he literally is, running on vapors from a financial perspective. I mean, Mike invested over $50 million into investigating this election fraud, purchasing data, putting together movies, supporting other lawsuits that are out there. I mean, he is all in, and because he, like me, believes that the 2020 election was stolen, and we need to get rid of these electronic voting systems. There's just so much that lay people do not know about the vulnerabilities of these electronic voting systems, that if they did know about it, they would freak out and all demand that we got rid of them. And it's not just me and Mike saying it. Before 2020, it was all the Democrats that were talking about these vulnerabilities. But somehow after 2020, everything got fixed, and there's nothing to see here. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Sorry, I'm not believing it. And so we've been very much in the mode of saying, open up the hood. There's a one-word solution to all of our concerns around election integrity, and that is transparency. And that's the exact opposite of the approach that's being taken by people like Jocelyn Benson and at the time Joe Biden and his administration.
Right. So this appeal process, it's a matter of money, and but here's the other issue that I see, and that is if the with such a huge settlement, or a huge award to Dominion against Mike for speaking out. I mean, I'm listening to you talk about it and what you believe, and I'm thinking to myself, are you going to be the next litigant? And I gotta believe people are going to be afraid to speak up about it now, because they might be in that.
You're sounding a little bit like you're about 30 feet under the water trying to communicate to me on the diving board.
Could you hear? How about, is it
That's
better?
better. Yeah.
Okay. I have it covered up. All right. Well, so my worry, I guess my thoughts are that, does this hurt? I mean, this award to Dominion against Mike, does this hurt other people from speaking up? Like, I'm listening to you talk right now, and I'm listening to you say these things, and I'm thinking, geez, are you going to be the next litigant?
Well, I've gotten 2 love letters from Dominion saying cease and desist, and I responded to both of them, and I let them know what the facts were in the case, and I know the truth, and I'm very confident that I can prevail by conveying that truth to anybody who wants to go off and make an issue out of it. So that's not a concern of mine. The fact that Mike was held in defamation is because he called him a treasonous individual.
Okay.
And it wasn't anything to do with the machines. And
Right.
See, I mean, literally, the plaintiff attempted, the lawyers, Coomer's lawyers, because there's a bigger agenda here. All right, it's not just
Sure.
obviously, when you're filing a case, 150 samples of evidence, and only one of them deals with the subject of the case, which is defamation. There's another agenda associated with this, and notably, Smartmatic and Dominion were actually at the trial. Their lawyers were actually at the trial because they've got multi-billion-dollar lawsuits against MyPillow specifically. So they want, and the fact that MyPillow was exonerated on this really kind of took the wind out of their sails on that front significantly, because there was nothing that MyPillow did. But more to the point, though, there was no direct communications or no direct indications that of anything dealing with the 2020 election. Nothing was decided in this case by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of evidence was provided, a lot of evidence was shared, but nothing, it doesn't deal at all with the veracity of claims made by myself and others around the integrity of the 2020 election. I will tell you, though, Mike's got one heck of a ground for appeal on this case, because literally from the beginning of the court case, the judge refused to allow body cam footage from law enforcement officers that arrested Eric Coomer after he drove his truck into a building, and he lied about it and said, no, that wasn't me. It just drove itself somehow into the building. And then he admitted later on in the squad car that, yeah, I lied. And that wasn't allowed to be admitted in evidence. And against that backdrop, and you look at the jury instructions that were issued by the judge did not include in the statement of fact messages that Eric Coomer sent to his own brother saying, time to shake that money tree, that we're going to go off and sue that pillow guy, and called him I won't get into, I'm assuming this is a family friendly show, so I won't get into some of the other pejoratives that he used on it. But I can tell you that Eric Coomer used a heck of a lot more colorful language against Mike Lindell than Mike Lindell used against Eric Coomer. Oh, now you're gone mute again.
How about now?
Yeah.
Better?
Yep.
Okay. So I think it's because I forgot. I pulled it out of the thing. So is there a was there any kind of countersuit if they were calling him names or saying things about him?
All this takes money, right? And it'll factor into the appeal. And
okay,
to the extent that they can invoke some anti-SLAPP provisions, which means that you can countersue automatically once you're exonerated and get damages and cover legal expenses and things like that. Well, that's a big deal. And there's a huge grounds for this. I mean, Eric Coomer, literally, Mike was victim number 26 for him. He's a serial litigator on defamation cases on this, and the jury wasn't allowed to actually consider that when they actually issued their judgment. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I guess. So, all right. So, is he going to start up a GoFundMe, or is there one already? Or
yep, not GoFundMe, because those guys like to censor people and hold on to money.
Right.
So, but if you go to givesendgo.com/Lindell, you will see Mike's fundraising page on it.
Give, Send, Go is all one word.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the good guys. They're run by a good group of Christians that, they will, unlike GoFundMe, which was actually refusing to pay out to people that they disagreed with politically. Give, Send, Go.
Okay, is that the address right there?
Yeah, you might want to test it. Folks can test it. It'll get in the ballpark. If you go to Give, Send, Go, it'll get
okay.
That's it.
So Give, Send, Go /Lindell, and that's where people can donate to his defense.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I'm sure people will want to help him out. I think people view him as kind of a pioneer in the stand up for what's right business kind of thing.
Well, he's fighting for our free speech.
Sure.
I mean, he's the lightning rod on it, and I can tell you, I've been with Mike. He'll go anywhere it takes to get the word out and reach people that haven't been reached yet on the topic of election fraud and the issues with our electronic voting systems. And so he is a warrior for sure.
Well, I'd love to have him on the podcast, and I promise I'll be in the studio where nothing ever goes wrong. I just decided, well, you're going to be, I don't normally do remote. Normally we have a studio, they do it right in the studio. It's great. But when you said you wanted to do remote, I thought, okay, well then I'll just do it from home.
Yep,
then my computer wanted to update at the same time. So then everything went wrong. So I've got 2 computers going plus a phone to have all the equipment to where in my studio, everything be perfect. So we'd love to have Mike on, maybe you and Mike back, and at some point kind of update us on what's going on and kind of that. What else is going on in your world? I don't talk to you anymore. For those who don't know, we sort of started on a wacky schedule. Normally I would have introduced him before, but I felt like I held everybody up too long. Former State Senator Patrick Colbeck was get this, Wayne County senator. He never served in the House. He went straight into the state Senate and served 2 terms there. And was really instrumental in the right to work vote and some other reforms that were there. He was considered the early, I guess, the Tea Party wave, or kind of the tail end of that, or the middle of that. He came in, and he served with my boss, Senator Jansen, who was the chair of what was the name of that committee? Reforms, Restructuring, and Reinventions, or something like that. The Triple R, they called it. And wherever the big reforms were needed in the government, it went to that committee. And Senator Colbeck was my boss, Senator Jansen's vice chair, as he was a freshman, and Mark Jansen was I don't know what you call him, senior or second termer or whatever. But anyway, so we worked together quite a bit in that committee and stuff. So what else?
Don't forget, you are our national anthem singer for
That's
all
true.
the Senate memorial services.
I still do that around here. I got blessed enough that last year I got to sing for President Trump at an event. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, that was. I saw
the Democrats killed the Senate memorial service.
Did they? Shame on them.
It still goes on. Yeah.
I don't know if they do. I don't know, but shame on them if they do.
My dog too.
So anyway, I haven't seen you in a while. So what else is going on? Just catching up. I guess Gina Johnson is going to be on our show on coming up. She's going to be on the show. She's going to be talking about all the reforms and things she's doing. She's really doing some good stuff over there. And I know you know her.
I'm kind of a one-trick pony. I'm all elections all the time. I mean, many of your listeners may not know this. The reason I got involved first of all, when I was in the Senate, back in the wake of the 2016 election, I called for an investigation of some funky business going on in Detroit at the time. One of my staffers, Penny Kreider, was out there with her husband and found out in the city of Detroit they had a tabulator machine that said that 306 votes were cast, but there's only 50 ballots inside the machine. And I said, we need to investigate that. So I called on Attorney General Schuette to go off and investigate it. He didn't do anything, but the Secretary of State at the time, Ruth Johnson, she went off and investigated it. They didn't get full subpoena authority. They weren't able to dig into anything except for the databases, and through the databases, they found at least 31 counts of voter fraud, and the Attorney General refused to investigate it. So that was my first introduction to the fact that something's rotten in Denmark, particularly in Detroit. So in 2020, I volunteered to be a certified poll challenger with the Election Integrity Fund, and I was there from 6 p.m. on election night to 6:30 p.m. or 5 p.m. on election night to 5:30 p.m. the next day. So I was there to witness the pizza boxes up on the windows while they were counting the military ballots. I was there to witness the van coming in at 3:30 in the morning with all the ballots with zero chain of custody. And I'm also a certified Microsoft small business specialist. And I can tell you that the machines that were doing the tabulation of the ballots and adjudication of the ballots were all connected to the internet. And despite election officials denying that, and I gave them chances to go off and prove I was wrong. By if you've got a Windows-based machine, all you do is you roll over your mouse down the bottom right-hand corner over that internet connectivity icon, and if it's connected to the internet, it'll say internet connection.
Right.
And they refuse to do that. And so later testimony in court trials proved that the machines were indeed connected. They just said not those specific machines, but there were some machines connected. And I can tell you, and we've got video evidence of this, that they were all connected onto the same network. So now that we've been lied to for a long time, and I can't stand being lied to, especially when the stakes are so high, which is for our elections.
Right.
To this day, I will certify, and I've got the evidence to support it. If you go out to my website, letsfixstuff.org, or you go out to my X feed and check out my articles that are up there, to this day, Wayne County was never lawfully certified in the 2020 election. Never lawfully certified. There's specific statutes that you have to follow in order to be certifiable in the election, and they ignored those statutes. And our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, which is another thing I've been up to, is bird dogging what she's been up to. She's been found in violation of the law by 7 separate courts. She's been issuing unlawful guidance to our clerks by 7 separate courts. Now, that's a big deal. And hopefully that provides a little bit of context as to why the Michigan House Oversight Committee subpoenaed her for a list of all of her training materials. They wanted to find out if she's following the law because when a clerk gets these directives from the Secretary of State, they're assuming that they're lawful.
Right.
But she's not doing that. And by the way, when she was caught issuing unlawful guidance, she was found to have been issuing unlawful guidance in O'Halloran v. Benson regarding poll challengers in the Michigan Court of Claims. And then in the Michigan Court of Appeals, she was struck down 3-0, where her attorney in that case, Heather Meingas, actually testified before the Court of Appeals saying, Jocelyn only follows the laws that she agrees with. And if you don't like that, you can go off and sue her, which is one of the bases for the impeachment that's going on. But then after she lost in the Court of Claims and Court of Appeals unanimously, she wanted to hedge her bets, so to speak, and she appealed it to the Michigan Supreme Court. After she issued her appeal to the Michigan Supreme Court, Jocelyn Benson's Michigan Legacy PAC donated $82,500 to Justice Kyra H. Bolden, who a couple months later issued a ruling in Jocelyn Benson's favor, overturning previously unanimous rulings against Jocelyn Benson. Oh, by the way, Bolden wrote the majority opinion in Benson's favor. So it stinks to high heaven. So I filed attorney grievance. I filed a grievance with the Attorney Grievance Commission against Benson for bribery. I've also filed claims of bribery with the Judicial Tenure Commission. They're not doing anything with it. Michigan Supreme Court, I had to take it there. They didn't do anything with it. So now it's just going to go into the federal queue, and we'll get it to our friends in the federal government. They're corrupt as hell. They're just corrupt as hell, and we got to call them out.
I guess here's the big question, and I guess this is a question on everybody's mind. When you think about how badly it was stolen in that election, and so my question is, can you not hear me again?
Yeah, you got to speak right into it, I think.
How about now? Better?
Yep.
Okay. Let me make sure my microphone's turned on. Here it is. Okay. So I guess on everybody's mind here. Can you hear?
Yep. Perfect.
Oh, okay. What's on everybody's mind, I suspect, is why, if it was so bad, why didn't they steal it again this last time?
They tried. And if it wasn't for folks like Fanny Montravati and Tim Vetter and kind of these data geeks out at the Election Integrity Force as well, monitoring the early voting returns, she would have stolen it again. What they discovered is that the daily ballots cast report that was being issued by the Secretary of State indicated on October 28th of this year, going into the election, that 125,428 illegal votes have been cast, which means that there are multiple votes. The same voter ID had cast multiple votes. And the day after this was brought to their attention, all of a sudden it was down to one illegal vote, which is still too many, but it was down to one. And they issued some explanation that said it was a data formatting error. Bullpucky. We've got the data. We looked at it. Their explanation of the script that they used to generate the report doesn't pass a sniff test. And I've issued FOIA requests around it. They've been they've been obstructing access to the information that would be needed to prove their case. And literally, if it truly was a data formatting error in the report that they're issuing, then it should be easy enough for them to go off and show us their math. They're not doing that. Instead, they're doubling down, and they're actually preventing access to that information now going forward in reports. So I'm telling you, if I were accused of wrongdoing and I was Secretary of State and I was confident that everything was up on the up and up on it, I would turn all my cards face up. Benson and her cronies are doing the exact opposite. They're turning face down. And I'm telling you, that's why we need to address this in 2020. There are a lot of people that were sitting there saying, stop focusing on 2020. Let's move on to 2022. Well, you know what happened in 2022. We lost the House. We lost the Senate. We lost the executive branch. We lost everything because we didn't push the needle. And so anyway, we're still pushing with the pedal to the metal. Transparency is still that one-word solution. The fact that we've got good people in the Michigan House right now with Representative Rochelle Smith. She's chairing the Election Integrity Committee. We've got Representative Jay DeBoyer, who's chair of the Oversight Committee, and then Speaker Matt Hall granted permanent subpoena authority to the Oversight Committee. You know how big a deal that is.
Yes, that is. That's huge.
That's huge because you don't have to go Mother May I every single time you want to go off and get a subpoena. You can, and that's what they're doing. They're taking advantage of it. They're getting the information out there. And Representative Ann Boleyn, too, now she's Appropriations Chair. She's investigating this and working on it and working with election integrity groups like Michigan Fair Elections to make sure that we have everything that we need in place to make sure that the 2026 is a secure election.
Well, and Ann or Representative Boland, she's from my county, and she was a clerk here for a long, long time. So she knows the inside tricks from there. So I've always appreciated her watchdogging and bird dogging the elections issues up there, because somebody could tell me something and I don't know anything about the election integrity process, so I can use common sense, but that would be about as far as I go. Where she could, she understands the lingo, she knows the tricks and the tips, and she could see through a lot of attempted smoke screens. So I appreciate her work on this.
Yeah, we'll see how things go in the appropriations process, but being the appropriations chair, you know how influential that is.
Oh, yes.
And a couple boilerplate items here and there could actually make a huge difference in making sure that we have election integrity. And frankly, it still all comes down to transparency.
Sure.
All we want to know, I mean, I've called for an audit in the wake of the 2016 election. I called for an audit in the wake of the 2020 election. I'm calling for an audit in the wake of the 2024 election. It's not a matter of who wins. It's about time to get under the hood and let everybody know how these elections are actually run. I mean, just to give you an example, right now in the state of Michigan, the qualified voter file is supposed to maintain voter history for a period of no less than 5 years.
Okay.
If I were to go off and ask for the qualified voter file for all the people who voted in the 2020 election, I will find out that there's over 350,000 fewer voters in the qualified voter file for the 2020 election than ballots cast.
Wow.
And that's in an election that was reportedly decided by 154,188 votes. That deserves an investigation. And the fact that our voter history data changes every freaking month when it should never change, that tells me that there's some problems. I just got a FOIA response back from the Michigan Department of State today for what's called an online voter API status report. So that's a fancy term for who has access to the state's qualified voter file. And in that report, the organization called Rock the Vote is the only organization listed. It's a non-government organization, which means they're not subject to FOIA requests. They had access to the Michigan qualified voter file. Access that nobody else has, by the way. And so why are these groups having this privileged access? Meanwhile, folks like myself and Tim Vetter with and Fonny Montravati with checkmyvote.org, we have to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars to get access to the same data these guys are getting for free.
Wow. Well, that begs the next question. So what do you see as far as candidates for Secretary of State? I'm not hearing anything. I'm hearing a lot of rumor, but I mean, it's like Sasquatch. Lots of rumor, no real sighting.
Yeah.
So
I had some folks approach me.
Yes, that was going to be me here.
Well, no, I mean, folks said that they're thinking of running. So.
Oh, okay. Why are you running?
Because
I don't know. I cannot honestly say there's one person that knows more about voter fraud than you. I don't know one person that could clean up better than you. But at the same time, if there is somebody out there, I'd be interested in knowing, just to see. We need to get behind somebody soon.
Yeah, my calling right now, and I listen to God first, and everybody else.
Sure, I always do. I get it.
Is make sure that whoever is running has a fair shot at the election, because our system is not fixed yet. I mean, we just saw it in 2024. They almost got away with it if it wasn't for those meddling kids, right? If it wasn't for those guys monitoring what was going on in that election, they would have. The election was decided by 80,000 votes in Michigan for president. They had 125,428 illegal votes already cast before election day.
Well, what better place could you stop all this happening than from the seat at the top?
When you're running, you're not monitoring what is going on, and so
that's true.
So I get it. And then it also requires money. And I can tell you, after literally for the first 3 years after I, witnessed what I witnessed in 2020 in Detroit, I didn't ever had a regular paycheck. So we were just literally living in, when my wife and I call it manna mode. And so we didn't know where the next dollar was going to come from to pay our bills, but God always provided.
That's right.
And we didn't question him. We just did what he said to go off and do, and he took good care of us. And then a couple of years ago, Mike Lindell hired me as COO, and now I got paid to do the same things that I was doing for free before. So that's God rewarding.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So I'm focused in on that lane, and we'll see where this goes. And
any favorites for Secretary of State? Gosh, we're all dying to know anything.
Not yet.
Okay.
Nope. And Attorney General, we got a problem. Governor, we got a problem.
Yeah.
And here's something really scary. There's a lot of people that like Mike Duggan, and they don't realize.
You are not kidding.
They don't realize what an organized crime boss this guy is.
I keep telling everybody, I have as a matter of fact, I have preached this for the last 5 years. I've talked about the first independent candidate that comes along is going to be really, really, really a tough cookie. It's going to be a tough battle because of how purple Michigan is. We're going to have those independents and swing voters that are looking for somebody like that isn't extreme. But whoever runs on the Republican side, and I am going to share this with any candidate that runs, I don't care which one wins, they need to make Detroit their first issue. And they need to say, they need to run on fixing Detroit, because if they don't if they leave things the way they are, people are thinking to themselves, well, Duggan fixed Detroit. He could fix Michigan like that. And you were there when Rick Snyder was, in there negotiating all that stuff. It wasn't Duggan doing that stuff.
Nope.
And it was the legislature, your legislature, that voted on all the things that helped Detroit along. It wasn't Duggan doing anything.
No, man,
Duggan fixed up. Yeah, go ahead.
And I was the only senator from Wayne County, and I offered to assist him, and I never got the time of day from the guy.
Right.
And I think it's because I have a reputation for not being able to be bought.
Right.
So literally, no, I just don't trust the guy at all. And so, but he's picking up a lot of steam. And on the U.S. Senate side, I'm telling you, I think Abdul Al-Sayed is probably going to be the Democrat nominee for U.S. Senate.
You think so?
I am almost positive. I mean, he would have won.
Yeah, I don't have.
If I wasn't his counterfoil in the governor's race, I think he probably would have been the gubernatorial nominee. But I think when he came out and in front of 150 members of the Michigan press and said, "Hey, Colbeck, you may not hate Muslims, but Muslims definitely hate you," I think that kind of shed a different light on his personality here. And
a little bit.
And so, and I stand. My concerns are, and you're seeing more and more of this. Ted Cruz introduces legislation on this. The guy has tangible affiliations with the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's a concern with everybody. And by the way, that's not an anti-Muslim.
I know.
Statement. That is, the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization as designated by Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. No, it's a terrorist organization like Al Qaeda, and they're working to undermine our system of government in Michigan. And this guy right now scares the heck out of me because he's running for U.S. Senate, and I do not want him anywhere near the halls of power up in D.C.
Yeah, well, I'm, right. I mean, I right now we've got one, possibly two candidates, and as far as that goes, I'm hearing that Heisinger over on the west side is getting pressure not to jump in the race. They want him. They don't want to. I am a little bit of I'm a little bit of hesitant to say, John James. I'm a little bummed that he jumped in, even though I'm not saying he would make a bad governor. I'm not taking that position, but I am saying that seat is now at risk. So we really need to. Heisinger might make a great U.S. senator too, but we can't risk that seat right now. Trump. We could lose majority, and that would be awful
with this election. I mean, it's a reset button on all of state government,
Mm-hmm.
and for the first time, I think in decades, we actually have a U.S. Senate seat up at the same time that we're hitting the reset button on on state government. So this is a big deal. I'll tell you, Al-Sayed's got very powerful friends out in Hollywood. He's been, I did some financial research on him. He's literally been double dipping with the taxpayers, getting over $100,000 from the university.
Right.
At the same time, he was earning hundreds of thousands of dollars from one company. This is bad news, guys.
It is.
So be prepared. The governor's race, we got to get a strong conservative candidate in for governor. And Eric Nesbitt, I'll tell you, when I was when I was making the case for how to fix the road without increasing taxes, I was out on the House floor trying to make the case to individual members there. And I was politely intercepted by Eric Nesbitt and said, we don't want you talking to any of the members on the House floor. So feel free to go back over to the Senate. So I was actually blocked from going onto the House floor to talk to the members about that plan. So I didn't appreciate that at the time. And he was a lot nicer about it, I got to admit, than Jace Bolger. Jace Bolger sent the sergeants at arms against me for opposing Medicaid expansion and keep me off the floor there. But Eric Nesbitt, unfortunately, decided to
what role did Eric have that he did that?
He was, I think,
was he
leader at the time.
He was the what? Floor leader?
Floor leader at the time.
What? I don't remember that.
Anyway, he was part of the leadership team.
Okay.
He took me aside and said, please don't. And he was at least polite about it. But I'll tell you, if people don't want to listen to what I had to say, that's one thing. If they're being prohibited from hearing it, that's a much different matter. And by the way, that's part of the big picture and everything for the topic we started off with. It's all about free speech and censorship that's
Right.
going on. And a lot of your listeners may not know about this, but it's very important that they do know about it, is that there was an active censorship campaign being executed in cahoots with the federal government in the lead up and the aftermath of the 2020 election. Congress, the Weaponization of Government Committee in Congress, United States Congress, actually put out a whole report on it. You can look it up yourself. That highlighted how the federal government, through CISA, through the Global Engagement Center, which is a derivative of the Department of State, which is now defunded thanks to Marco Rubio and President Trump, and a few other organizations, were in collusion with big tech, big media, to censor folks like myself and Mike Lindell for talking about the election. And they had a whole system built up to make sure that we couldn't say what we're saying on this podcast and what I've said on many other broadcasts around the election. And so if people are saying, well, we haven't heard the evidence of election fraud, well, there's a reason for that. People are actively working against and suppressing the release of that information, which is why I wrote the book, The 2020 Coup. And by the way, the evidence that I put in there is getting more compelling each and every day. So by the way, if any of your listeners want to go off and buy that, that's part of how we kept the lights on during that 3-year period. It's you can get it at mystore.com and use the promo code meddling kids and you'll get a discount. Here's the good news. Is that there are a lot of folks that are meddling kids. There's folks that are getting engaged on the election fraud front and devoting countless hours and financial resources to go off and hold people accountable for stealing our elections. And so I think it's really important that we recognize all these meddling kids that are out there, because I may be the spokesperson because I'm a former state senator or whatever, but a lot of these folks, like Fanny Montravati, he's just a programmer that's got some skills. Tim Vetter is a database guy with the auto companies. Braden Jacobazzi is another auto company guy. They're numbers guys. They're looking at what's happening and they're going, something's rotten in Denmark, and they're getting it out to people however they can.
Well, so what about some of the other candidates? Have you got any insight or experience to any of the other one? You see, Tom Leonard just jumped in today.
Jumped into what?
The governor's race. He announced he's running for governor too.
Yeah, we knew he was going to run for something on it. Well, I'll tell you, my wife is going to be
very
interested.
I was kind of hoping he would go for. I'm sorry?
Yeah, my wife is going to be very interested in that, because right before one of my last acts as a Michigan State Senator was to hold a forum on the risks associated with wireless radiation. And Tom Leonard had a bill up for a vote and on whether or not to expand 5G deployment in the state of Michigan. And all we asked for was that he delayed that a couple days and instead he took it up the next day. So we just wanted the representatives to hear about some of the risks, because I had the president of Microsoft Canada coming in talking about it. I had experts from the FDA that had done all these analyses. I said, just listen to what this is and then come to your decision, and then you can vote on it to your heart's content. I didn't say don't vote. So that was disappointing. And then also, I'll tell you another key concern that I had with them is that I worked really hard to get, the headwinds that I faced in my second term in the Michigan Senate with Arlen Meekoff. And I actually got Michigan Enhanced Education Savings Plan, which is essentially allowing parents to control where their money was being spent for their kids when it came to education. And I got these bills passed out of the Michigan Senate, which is a miracle with Meekoff there. And then I got it passed out of the House Education Policy Committee, and it was sitting on the House floor, and Tom Leonard had the ability to go off and put that up for a vote, and he never did. So I'm a little concerned with both those. He's got a good reputation. He's very good, very amiable. He's good guy to talk with, but I'll tell you, when push comes to shove, when you need somebody to do the right thing, I have not found him to be able to deliver.
Well, what about let's go way back to Mike Cox. What do you think there?
Did you see the last time he ran?
Yeah.
Did you listen to, first of all, I think every single time he got up on stage, he was saying, point to my website, and he just repeated the website over and over again. But he got very combative with everybody that was up there. And I don't think he well, suffice to say here, I'm going to couch everything with the basic fact that I ran to be governor for a reason. I really was hoping to be governor on that, because we had a lot of plans that, frankly, there's only 3 positions in government that drive policy. The rest is window dressing. That's the governor, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Speaker of the House. All the rest is just a supporting cast. And so I was so frustrated by not getting all of our policies going forward. That's why I ran for governor. And I'm not seeing anybody that's taken up the causes that I was trying to take up. And so healthcare reform and the road, how to fix the roads without increasing tax. You build better roads. It's not rocket science.
Right.
They last longer, less orange barrels. So I want to see somebody taking up those mantras. And if you go to morninginmichigan.com, I still have a lot of those policies up there for people to take a look at. Find a candidate that's going to go off and start promoting those values. And the closest I've seen to that has been Ryan Kelly in the past. And then, but there might be some other candidates that come up in there, like Ralph Rabant. And Ralph is a good man inside and out. And I think he's a good candidate for governor as well.
Well, I think that, I don't remember, Mike's, we're back to Mike Cox. I don't remember his campaigning much, but I do remember that as an attorney general, I don't
Watch
know.
the mic again.
Pardon me? Oh, okay now?
Yep.
Okay, so as an attorney general, I recall him being very thorough, very good, he did not toot his own horn. He just got the job done. And he did some really amazing reforms that he never messaged, he never really put out there. He just did it. And the people that it affected, for example, I remember being a single mom. This is the reason I know I paid attention to him in the first place. As a single mom, my husband moved to Florida. There goes my child support. And it wasn't long after that Mike Cox, without really blasting it out there anywhere, created a reciprocity from state to state with child support. He went and worked with the other one. I got child support because of it. So it wasn't something he's broadcast or talked a lot about. So anyway, I don't know what he was like as a campaigner, if he was combative or whatever, and maybe some communications situation.
He hasn't flipped the switch for me. Let me just simplify it at that. So,
okay.
But I haven't seen anybody flipping the switch in the current cast that's out there. So I'm
not endorsing him. I'm just saying, I'm looking at what's going on. And what about John James?
No.
What's his pros and cons? No.
No,
there's just a no. Okay. You had like reasons behind everything else. What's the no about John James?
I've spent some quality when I was running for governor. I had a chance to, let's just say, what has he done? Right. And probably most recently, I'll say he had an opportunity to win his election in the U.S. Senate. All he had to do was challenge it in 2020. And we could have made a case for, we wouldn't have had to deal with all this stupid standing garbage we're hearing all over the place. And he didn't do anything. Right.
Okay.
That was a glorious time to rise up and lead. And instead, it was kind of like the Monty Python song, "Here We Are, Brave Sir Robin." So
I remember that song.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed there. Yeah.
Anyway, so we got Greg here. It's one of our watchers here. He's wondering what your thoughts on Anthony Hudson is.
I know my friend Trucker Randy's all big on him, but I don't really know too much about him. That was my issue when I ran. I had 13% name recognition. I know 15% name recognition. I got 13% of the vote. So, I mean, pretty good percentage, but you got to get to the other 85%.
Right.
If you don't have the money to do that, it's not going to be.
And
So,
I think he has less money than you did at that time. So it's gonna he's got
I
a big
don't
hill.
know. Let's see. I mean, let's make them make the case for us, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you there's very few people that I've seen stand up over the last 4 years. And so anybody who's just a pop-up candidate that hasn't been in the fight for the last 4 years, I get a little concerned, because if they can't find something to rally around with what Gretchen Whitmer was doing to putting COVID patients in nursing homes and shutting down churches and keeping open Home Depot and crap like that, if you couldn't find anything around the 2020 election to stand up for and take a stand on, then I don't know who you are. Right? I mean, literally, you're not looking out for the people in that context. If you weren't standing up then I don't have a lot of confidence in you.
Well, you made a good point. So, is Ryan Kelly thinking about it? I'm hearing yes, I'm hearing no. I'm also hearing Kevin Rinke. Maybe yes, maybe no.
Yeah, I don't know. Ryan, I mean, obviously he was put in prison as a result of being there on January 6th. And that kind of deflates your income potential a little bit over that point in time. And I know he spent a lot of time with his family and making up for lost time and stuff then. So I don't know. But one thing I will tell you about him, I was part of a Michigan Coalition for Freedom, a group of pastors all across the state, and we wanted to evaluate all the gubernatorial candidates in the 2022 election. And Ryan, we actually ran, instead of just a typical debate, we actually ran simulations and said, all right, you're giving your first State of the State address as you have 5 minutes to do it, but what are the key points you want to share with the citizens of Michigan? Here, you faced your first crisis and you picked the crisis. It's one of those things that you think is going to pop up in an emergency. How are you going to respond to that crisis? And what's your statement to the press in the wake of that crisis? And oh, by the way, you're going to have your first budget proposal. And what are you going to say to the House and Senate Appropriations Committee regarding your proposed budget? So we actually put them through essentially their job training course right there. And Ryan excelled out of all of them. And I hate to say this, but I didn't give him the topics of the discussion until the night before. Everybody else had it for a week before, and I had the wrong email address for him, and it didn't faze him. And he came out and kicked butt, and you could tell that he knew the job that he was supposed to be filling on it. So that's what impressed me the most out of it. Is that he's obviously studied what the job entailed.
No, I agree. I think that he could. I think he could do a good job, and I think he's electable, which is equally as important. But you're right. He recently spoke. We had a dinner here in Livingston County, and he was one of our keynotes, and did a fantastic job. And had everyone engaged as always. But that is walking us through that whole process. Just it really
disgusting.
It's disgusting. You're right, and it's like for a few years there we were approaching, Russia.
Yeah, I had the Attorney General's office visit my home.
Oh, that's just
these guys are
wrong. It's wrong.
And then,
that's supposed to be here.
Yeah, I went and it was just to intimidate me. It was over some emblem, like the state emblem was in a document that was on a website that I managed, and somebody else had put it up there, but they decided that instead of just calling up or sending me an email or sending me a letter, let's send over 2 special agents and make our point, right? And I attempted to oversee the 2022 counting of the votes at the county level in Wayne County. And when I went into the clerk's office, I had 5 law enforcement officers making sure that little old me, did not get in and oversee the counting of the votes as a certified poll challenger. I had 2 Detroit police officers from their tactical unit, 1 deputy sheriff from Wayne County, and 2 special agents of the Attorney General that I swear when you look at the footage, the surveillance footage that I later FOIA'd and got after a lawsuit, they look like Gestapo. Every time I moved somewhere, they were taking notes. One was in front, one was in back. They're trying to find something to arrest me on.
Wow, that's crazy. And I'll tell you something. It's to me the last say 5 years. It was almost like that story about how you boil frogs.
Yeah.
You put them in the cold water and you just turn the heat on low, and the temperature changes so gradually you don't really notice it. And by the time it's boiling, it's too late.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, yes, we saw the changes, we saw them, but one by one, they built up to the point where we were getting almost desensitized to some of the earlier stuff because of the later stuff. And then I remember at the inauguration, we had a watch party at our Victory Center, and there was probably 25 or 30 of us there. And we were sitting there, we were listening to President Trump's speech talk about, as of today, that he's going to sign an order this, he's going to sign this order, he's going to sign this order. And I remember saying to everybody, am I dreaming or is this really happening? Because you didn't realize I didn't realize how many freedoms and how much insane changes had been done one at a time until we saw this big list of stuff. He was like, no more, from gender to pronouns to sports to bathrooms to all that stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, how did we get into this world? How did this happen? It just snuck up on us, even though I was paying attention. I saw all these things, but you really didn't realize how many things there were until you start unchecking the boxes, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I was really excited too, because by my evaluation, 8 or 9 of those executive orders that he signed on day one directly or indirectly addressed election fraud, and if you have heard this or not, one of the photo that sits outside the Oval Office is Trump's mugshot. And he's going after election fraud. I can tell you, Mike Lindell has been in to chat with him multiple times. I know the information firsthand that Mike's given to the president, and the president's acting on it, on election fraud. He takes it seriously, because all those things you were talking about with the pronoun crowd and the LGBTQ and the drag queen reading sessions with their kids and all that kind of stuff. Well, you don't change any of those policies until you have control of making sure you have fair elections. And so I'm happy to see, I think with the support of Mike Lindell, the president has really taken some actions, and he's checking the box off on a lot of it. And here's just one little quick side note. Did you ever notice how President Trump was very visible on election night with the signing of those executive orders? He did sign several in front of a whole arena, 20,000 people. Then he stayed up till the wee hours of the morning signing. And against that backdrop, what came out recently? The auto pen scandal. I think President Trump knew about the auto pen since day one. He wanted to make sure that all the executive orders he was signing, there's no way anybody could say that they were signed by an auto pen.
Agreed. Joan, I just got a note here that my sound is terrible. Joni, can you hear this? Is this better? I never
You just keep moving your hand a little bit.
Okay, I'm trying not to. Yes. So I never thought about that. I never once thought about that, but you're right. He might have done that on purpose.
Oh, I think he came in with a plan this time, unlike 2016, where he was going to just try to go with the flow. I think this time he said, nope, the flow stopped. We got a dam. I'm going to carefully release it, and we're going to get a lot of power out of this dam. And I think he's put in some people in some very good positions, and I think they're executing as well. And I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing, not just out in public, but what I also know is going on behind the scenes. So it's encouraging.
That's good. We're all, like I said, I remember watching that inauguration and having it all hit me how many things were so bad, and now they were going to be undone, and it was this big monkey off your back. It was just this big sigh of relief that for now it's over. And
Well,
the
don't
hardest.
take a deep breath. Now we got to earn it. Now
Well,
we got to.
Well, that's what I started to say was, and now, as my role as chair, it's to make sure people don't just lay down and say, all right, it's over. It's not. It's this next year, and probably the hardest message I'm having to get out is that this next year in Michigan is as important to Michigan, if not more important than the federal was last year, to the United States, because we can't. Trump fixed a lot of federal issues, but he can't. There's things in Michigan that she's done that she will do that he can't. He can't touch. It's a Michigan thing. So we need to get the equivalent of Trump in the governor's seat that will start to undo all the nonsense that the governor did. And plus, not to mention, we need to retain the House and we need to win the Senate back.
Right. And I'll tell you, somebody who's been on the front lines with dealing with the election stuff, where do I go? First 2 years, I had nowhere to go on any of this stuff here. I was literally, my days were numbered. These folks were gunning for folks like me and others. And by the grace of God, somehow we got through that. And then we got the Michigan House in there. Now we got a great leadership team executing there. We've got some folks in the House that have been supporting me on these complaints, like Representative Jim DeSanta and Representative Steve Cara and Joe Fox. These guys have been great. And we also had support from folks like Matt Maddock and from Josh Shriver. So there's a rallying cry of some folks that are willing to take a stand. And even though now we're in control, they're actually doing some good stuff. And usually when we're in control, we stop the forward lean. Now we got to keep the forward lean going and take it all the way across the finish line. Because I'll tell you, the guys we're fighting against on this stuff, they never relent. They are constantly going, and because their livelihood depends on it. They depend on a big government. We depend on government staying out of our way. But you got to fight to keep the government out of your way.
That's true. That's true. And you're right. And they're so organized. That's the word I always use. They're organized.
Oh, these NGO networks are huge.
Yep.
I never, when I was in the state government, state senate, I never had an appreciation for how deep the deep state really was until I started investigating what was going on in the election fraud. And it's literally, there's 134 organizations, the usual cast of characters: Black Lives Matter, Planned Parenthood, LGBTQ Alliance, all these guys were forming an organization called Protect the Results. And this is before the 2020 election. So what results were they protecting? We talk about protecting election integrity. They were talking about protecting the results. So they knew something we didn't know. And these guys, they were in cahoots with groups like Shutdown DC and Democracy Now! And these other groups that were actively planning the insurrection that my friends like Ryan Kelly got thrown in jail for. These were the people, the Democrats were the ones planning. They literally had tactical maps of Washington, D.C., of the Capitol building. They were doing war games as to who would break the windows, who would instigate what behavior. They were actively planning all this. And I've been involved in grassroots politics and state party politics for a long time now. We are never that freaking organized as these guys were on this. These guys literally had a plan, and they're working the plan. And frankly, this goes back to the topic we started off with, which was Coomer versus Lindell. Part of their plan was they wanted to make an example out of any Republicans and Trump supporters and make sure that they were cut off from all sources of livelihood. That's what they're doing to folks like Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, and my good friend Mike Lindell. And so unless we stop these guys, it literally is a communist attempted takeover. When Barack Obama said that he wanted to fundamentally transform America, he wasn't kidding.
Yeah, it's yes, and it's too much. There's too much at stake. There's just too much at stake to lose that. If we keep messing like this, we have to put a stop to it. So I'm driven. My team is driven. We've done things like create this podcast to get the word out, and it's really picking up steam.
Well, you're a last wall of defense there out in Livingston County. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm in
we've been
Wayne
told
County. We've been overrun. Oakland County is almost completely overrun. Livingston County is where the front line is right now.
That's right, and we're aware of that. We are very, very proud of our red county, and all the elected officials being red, and our wonderful, outstanding commission that is so conservative and so get the job done, and they toe the line, they vote correctly, they save the money for the rainy day. When the rainy day comes, we don't have to bond, we don't have to tax, we can put in this new thing, or we can do this because they're not spending money foolishly. So we're very, very proud of our Republican. Now I'm really, really wanting I have another reason for really working hard on the Republican, gaining Republican control back, because the next redistricting must change what happened. The last redistricting, we have a Democrat House member in Livingston County because of that stupid redistricting. Put the south end of our county in with Washtenaw. Oh, it's awful.
Not just the redistricting. I'll tell you, even conservative districts and conservative counties like Livingston County can be impacted by this election fraud. My analysis of the 2020 election asserts that all 83 counties were victims of the mail-in ballot fraud.
Right.
And you've got groups like GBI Strategies, which was caught in Muskegon and then buried by the Attorney General and the FBI and unfortunately state police as well in Michigan. But they had tens of thousands of illegal applications for absentee votes that were out there that were buried. This mail-in ballot fraud affects all 83 counties. The machines only factor in when they don't predict the voter turnout accurately, and then they gotta inject it, which gets into it's riskier operation for them because they got more hands to feed in that context. So this upcoming election, though, is big on another front. They're going to try to push ranked choice voting on the ballot.
Oh, yes. And
guys, that is a really, really bad idea. I can tell you, as somebody who's very intimate with what happened in Antrim County, that there is significant evidence from the machines themselves that indicate that ranked choice voting was actually active during that, which causes a mismatch on the ballot reads, which is why they had a high error rate on the ballots. So that's one of the explanations that's not talked about, but that was part of the issue. And then also ranked choice voting. If you appreciate the idea that it's one person, one vote, ranked choice voting gets you into fractions.
We had couple of months ago, maybe a month ago or so, maybe 6 weeks ago, we had Megan Reckling actually came on the show, and she did a fantastic, we have a podcast on it, and she did a great explanation of what it was, why it's bad, and everything else. So we're familiar with that out here, and we're going to try and work against it. We have on the next Tuesday, we have actually Carla Wagner's coming on to talk about Axe My Tax. That's going to be
all across the state. Jesus.
Yeah, I'm really anxious to hear some. It sounds terrific, but there are some legitimate concerns, and I'm not talking about from the Democrats, from Republicans too. It's all the same. What happens to certain things? Is I don't know the Michigan property tax law, but I do know, and as you know, I've worked up there long enough, and for enough different legislators that I know that laws sometimes are standalone, and sometimes they're the bottom peg on a Jenga game, and you pull that law, and everything else crashes on top of it. You don't realize. So, what I want to know, I want questions about the unintended consequences. That can be a terrific ballot initiative, but it could also have horrible consequences if they're not vetted. So I just have questions.
Carla's a really good spokesperson.
I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it. I have a feeling that's going to be one of our biggest biggest viewed podcasts. Everybody wants to know about it. So we're looking forward to that. But Axe My Tax, and then you've got Brian Posthumous also was on our podcast. He came out to Livingston County and talked about the ballot proposal he's doing about requiring ID, which I'm hoping becomes a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, it's should have been done a long time ago.
I know, and it's terrible that it has to be that we have to actually think about a ballot initiative to do this.
It's embarrassing because I mean I've been working with Mike Lindell, so I'm looking at the policies all across America on voter ID, and Michigan's a disgrace.
Yeah, so hopefully we can take a stab at that. But you're right, that ranked choice voting is horrible, just absolutely horrible. Needs to go. And yeah. So we have to come up. But again, if we don't get organized, which we're terrible about two things, we're terrible about organizing, and we're terrible about, and we have money, but we're not organized, and we don't have a message.
Well, I'll tell you, if you had the money, you'd have the message on it too.
No,
in this case.
no, it's Pat. We have PR. We don't have messaging. We've never been good at creating a message.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a rare situation that Republicans create a message well. Democrats are pros. They're organized. They've got this down pat. We react sometimes.
Well, they unify around a single message.
Yes.
They're very good at being lemmings, right? So that's the beauty of communism, is that everybody is communing around one particular view of the universe.
Right.
What we do is we eat our young on our side.
That's true.
So, and so, I mean, even me today, I'm sitting there highlighting, here's the problem I have with this person, this person, this person. I'll tell you, if they got on the ballot, I'd be unified behind them 100%. But I want to be pretty damn picky during the primary process, during the general election, on lockstep.
Well, for me, and I can find something I like about all the candidates, and I can find something I don't like about all of them. And I suspect that would be about 5 people that I could even think about running. But I want, and to me, I think this is vital. We have to pick somebody that can beat Duggan. Period. We have to be somebody that can beat Duggan. And this is the way I'm seeing it. Either this is going to be a complete like brand new territory where all those swing voters and middle people rush to Duggan, because I know you're right. There are even Republicans that are like, yeah, I could live with him. Yeah. And but what I'm hoping we go back to the George W. years where what's his name? Ralph Nader ran and split up the Dems to allow Bush to rise up. I'm really hoping that Duggan is our Ralph Nader, if that makes sense.
No, it's exactly right. I mean, and obviously Jocelyn Benson's trying to take the Katie Hobbs path to getting in the governor's office. You just set up the election system to make it favorable for you and then get in. And so, I'm hoping that, I want Benson, I want to make sure she pays for her crimes. But part of me sits there and says, I don't want to weaken her too much so that she's in there to keep it as a two-way race on the Dems with her. But I'm from what I'm seeing a lot of people with R's next to their name that are going behind Duggan.
Yes, I'm seeing that too, and that's making me real nervous. So, I and it's just going to depend on what we can do. But as I said, I'm really hoping that these gubernatorial candidates really make an issue about fixing Detroit and paint him as in lockstep with Whitmer and what was her name, Granholm and everybody else as he can, and make it clear that it was the Republicans in the Senate and Rick Snyder that did those big reforms in Detroit. It was not Michael Duggan. So that needs to come out.
Hang around is and that is the fraud that's happening inside of Detroit. So I don't know if you've seen the testimony of Pastor Sewell and Ramon Jackson. I mean, I went down with Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips, met them at their 180 church, and these are Detroiters that are tired of having their vote stolen in Detroit. Duggan could have made a big deal out of that. So I think election fraud is something. It's probably his most vulnerable flank, frankly, for Duggan right now. So I know. So if you can go off and highlight how Detroiters have been disenfranchised for years, and this isn't just Republicans saying it. We've got Detroiters or Democrats in their primaries that are talking about how their elections are stolen. And when you go off and counter and juxtapose that against how Duggan won his first term as mayor with a write-in ballot campaign. Yeah, right.
Unbelievable.
Right. So I think he's vulnerable. I think you can do a whitewash and just say, yeah, Republicans were the ones that gave them the helping hand when they needed it. But ultimately, when Duggan's been in there, besides riding the wave that we created, he's actually created an atmosphere of corruption.
Yes.
And this needs to be addressed.
Yes. So I'm hoping that and we got a team here that are going to be working kind of on a messaging package to give all the gubernatorial candidates. I don't care which one wins, whoever it is, they all need to go after him. They cannot just hope he goes away, or they cannot just think that they've got the answer. Somebody needs to make Detroit, because Michigan is, I did a little diagram here, and I said people think that Michigan, because it's a purple state, is half red, half blue. That is not the case at all. It's got some red on one side, some blue on one side, and this big chunk of purple in the middle that are independents or swings, and they don't like extremes. And so they're going to be attracted to somebody that says, oh, I'm in the middle. I'm not a dumb. They're going to be very attracted to that. So we need to make sure that the messaging is out there, that, like I said, we don't message very well. And we need to make sure that all the candidates, it doesn't matter what their position is or what they say about each other, they all have to be saying the same thing about Duggan, because he needs to be painted as he is and not as people think he is.
And here's the biggest issue on all of that, around messaging, is that what I found is that the media is distinctly biased across the state. I mean, really biased against Republicans, particularly biased against conservatives, but biased against Republicans, period. And that is a major, it's a 2 against 1 whenever you're running on it. And it's a big deal. And that's the major challenge that is going to have to be overcome, I think.
I agree with you. And I think that this is a campaign. This is, like I said, it needs to be organized, but it needs to come from social media. It needs to come from, it needs to be done in speeches by them. It needs to be done in emails by them. It needs to be done in their letters by them, their mailings. It needs to be done on podcasts such like this one. Well, it needs to be done in, all kinds of ways where they get free speech.
This is the news nowadays.
It's
not the, I had to issue my own cease and desist letters out to Craig Mauger and to a broadcaster out for Channel 4 in Detroit, and he got reassigned to Boston after that. But because they're lying, they will defame, they will do anything to go off and smear somebody's character on it. We need to go off and get to podcasters and get to the influencers, because these media outlets are losing their audience. And so we have to go around them, to like the Steve Grubers of the world and to the, Justin Barclays of the world. And we've got some avenues, but we've got to start leveraging those avenues. My friend Tyrone Hughes out in Ann Arbor. I mean, we've got some sound pieces, but we somehow give up on the communication thread. That's free media for us, that you don't have to pay for it. It's not a bunch of money. You get it out. They use it all the time on their side. We never use it on our side.
And I'll tell you, there's a real hunger for it from people that want news. And I will tell you, we started this podcast in February. I did it so Livingston County people would get to hear the Republican side of stuff. My husband's a commissioner here, and he has been for some time. And I've gone to many commission meetings where I've heard them vote about something. And let's just say they give $60,000 to the veterans. Well, the next meeting, 2 weeks later, during Call the Public, you'll have somebody, one of the frequent flyer Dems that show up and scream about things, will stand up and yell about how come they only gave $6,000 to the veterans. So then the media is there, and the media then reports about how the, disgruntled constituents showed up to complain about the $6,000. But by the time, public comment was over, and at the end of the night, when the commissioners say it was not 6,000, it was 60,000, by then the media is already gone. So we devised this. That's why we say call it the right side. It is the side that is not ever shown in the media. And like I said, I was going to be happy with if I got 200 or 300 views. I remember the first 100 views, I was over the moon. And all of a sudden I'm seeing it's going up, and the views, and it's over 1,000. And I'm, holy cow, there's 1,000 people watching this. Now, within a couple, 2-3 weeks, we're at 3,000 to 5,000 views. And it's only been since February. And it's not that,
That's how
I mean,
it's
it's not that this is, the end all. It's just people are hungry for it. So, the fact that I'm hoping that these gubernatorial candidates use this as this one and others like it. And, and like I said, there's ways to get that message out that you can just totally bypass the media. And the media now is being so exposed that they don't even try to hide it anymore.
No. And I mean, and like I said, that congressional report makes it very clear that the media was in cahoots with the Democrats effectively, and they weaponized our own government against us. So the way you go off and get the word out is through podcasts like your own.
Yep.
And a lot of these other media folks are doing their own podcasts. And I mean, I'll tell you, I started out talking about election fraud to like 20 people, 30 people. I talked to whoever would listen to me. And obviously the crowd started growing because we were sharing information that nobody else was able to share. And I provide the receipts. So they're looking for, if the media outlets would actually provide the receipts and their source documents and actually show support for their assertions, I think they'd have a lot more credibility. And you give enough time on this podcast to actually let somebody talk about some of the details. I mean, I bet you a lot of the people who are listening right now didn't know that there's 350,000 fewer voters than people who cast ballots and than ballots cast in the 2020 election. That's because the media is not going to talk about that.
No, and it's good information. And that's why, I always tell everybody, you're uncensored, you're unedited. It will not be changed. Your full comments will be left there in perpetuity for people to listen to over and over. And we always get on the first night, we always get several hundred voter or listeners, but then I'll look the next day, like after 24 hours, it spikes. And I think everybody listens to it on the way to work the next morning or on the way home or something. So,
in this case, it might go down, but yeah.
I don't think so. I think this was, this is the kind of stuff that, and it's like, I'm in the business of giving people information. I get people on here to tell their side, to tell their story, to tell what happened, and then let people make up their own mind. I'm not going to endorse or point anybody in one direction or another from here. From this platform, it's just all about giving information. So, you have a lot of information, you have experiences, and people need to know this stuff. They can make up their own mind, with whatever they want to, but we put up your websites and people can go donate or people can go investigate. So it is, I really appreciate you taking the time to, and I really appreciate you hanging in with all the technical difficulties. Normally we're flawless. So this is
another reason why we need to get technology out of our voting systems.
No, I mean, we could say that, or we could just say next time you just haul your butt to Livingston County and get to our studio, and we don't have this problem at all. This was I don't normally do remote. I normally do it in the studio. So I thought, okay, well, he's gonna be remote, so will I. Well, that's so much for that. So I need my, I have my studio with my lighting and my surround sound camera and microphone and everything else, and the cameras are perfect, and the big screen on the wall. So everything is much easier than trying to talk into a phone while looking at a computer screen.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you just have to overcome challenges, right? So
that's right.
So I appreciate you hanging in there. Anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, if you could support my friend Mike Lindell, go to givesendgo.com/Lindell. That would be great. If you want to find out more information about some of the stuff that I was talking about here today, follow me on X at PJ Colbeck, or go to letsfixstuff.org, or go to theelectioncrimebureau.com. That's the organization that I manage for Mike and regarding our elections.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for coming. And like I said, when you get a chance, set up a time for Mike to come on, and you and Mike to come on. You can be remote, and this time I'll be in the studio where nothing will go wrong. And we can have a further discussion on, as he progresses on that stuff. The other thing is, we in Livingston County always have events. Always. If you ever want to bring him out to speak at one of them, we're a good, solid red place to talk to. So anyway, just plant some seeds for you there, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Well, good seeing you as always. We'll talk soon.
All right, knock 'em alive.
Good night. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody hanging in there. I'm going to go to a couple commercials, and I'm going to come back and talk about some things into my phone. So this is going to be interesting. Okay, so let me go right to a commercial here as soon as I find one. There we go.
John Adams warned that the Constitution is wholly inadequate without a moral and religious people. As conservatives, we must reclaim the faith that shaped it, rooted in Jesus Christ and the Bible. To help you understand the historic Christianity that our country was founded on, check out theexaltedchrist.com, a resource website proclaiming Christ as King.
Ready to make your real estate dreams a reality? Meet Lisa R., your trusted expert in Livingston County. With 25 years in the real estate marketplace, she offers a seamless, stress-free experience. As a Real Estate One agent, Lisa has access to a network of over 2,000 agents and a one-stop shop for mortgage, title, and insurance services. Call Lisa R. at 734-260-7277 or visit her at Real Estate One in Brighton. Let her help you find your dream home or sell your property with confidence.
And we're back. I'm hoping that you can still hear me. Again, I appreciate everybody kind of hanging in there with the technical issues. I'm thinking this will just have to work. You just have to watch me talking to my phone. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Just listen and don't look if it's weird. Hopefully somebody let me know if you can hear me okay, or if I'm muffled or garbled or whatever. Somebody post on there if they would, let me know. Also, I try to show every post that goes, or at least most of them. So if you've posted something and I haven't flashed it across the screen, it could be that they're not showing up. You might want to go to a different medium. One of the places that I find I can see Joni's for once today, so she must have gone to a different medium. Generally, if you go to the Livingston County Republican Party Facebook page, you can get on there, and those comments show up real well. So Joni hears me good. So I think that sometimes people go to the YouTube, directly to the YouTube, and then they post, but it doesn't show up here. So go to the Livingston County Republican Party Facebook, and that would your comments will show up. And then, like I said, if I haven't showed them on screen, that generally means I don't have them. So anyway, so some of the things I wanted to talk about. First of all, I want to just say what a great conversation that was with Pat Colbeck. I didn't get a second speaker, because I kind of thought it could go long. I used to work with him, and finally from Joni. Joni says she hears me finally. So I used to work with him in the Senate, as I said, and he's very interesting. He's a very, very intelligent individual, and I knew that he could cover a lot of topics. So I intentionally pulled back on a second speaker, because I didn't want them waiting while he was still talking about interesting things. So really enjoyed conversations with him. So one of the things I want to talk about, first of all, just let's come out of the rest of the month. Tomorrow night at the American Legion on the corner of Grand River and M59 is our free ballroom dance class lessons. It's going to be a blast. We've got 2 men coming from the MSU Ballroom Dance Club. They're nationally ranked or nationally rated or whatever you want to call them, dancers. And they're going to teach the swing, the waltz, and the tango. And it's going to be a blast. So don't worry about, this is not Dancing with the Stars. This is just going to be fun. So plan on coming. Don't worry if you got 2 left feet. It doesn't matter. We're just going to have fun up there. And don't worry if you don't have a partner. We'll figure it out. We're going to also open it up to anybody there from the 141. So, they'll get to, you might want to go grab a vet and dance with a vet. That's just fine. So, we're going to do that. That's going to be a blast. Thursday, just as a reminder, it's our new candidate training, our new candidate campaign training. So it's basically the 101. Anybody that's even thinking about becoming a candidate, you want to attend this. So you want to come, you want to just listen. It's 5:30 to 8:30. It's at our Victory Center in Hamburg, behind Hamburg Family Dental. You just Google Hamburg Family Dental and you'll see the signs. Just go behind there. There's a building back there and we're behind that building. So that's at 5:30 tomorrow. And Thursday. And that's going to be very interesting. Friday, we have Food Truck Friday. We're going to be in Pinckney at Food Truck Friday. We're going to have a booth there. It's going to be we have various volunteers from our organizations going to be there to sign up people for membership. So that's a great place to go. And then a week from Thursday, I think it's the 26th, it is we're going to have a kind of an open house at the Victory Center for anybody that's even, that a Republican, even if you're not a member, come on down. They're going to be grilling hot dogs and we're all going to bring dish to pass. We're going to have a nice little potluck. So we're going to have a real good time. So anybody even thinking about, geez, I wonder what it's like or what those people are like, or is she as nutty in person as she is on the podcast? Yes, she is. Come on down. We have a good time together and you'll get to meet like-minded individuals that will enjoy it. So, all right. One of the things I wanted to talk about was and I guess I got 3 different topics I listed, and I don't know if anybody that wants to talk about this or that, but one of them was kind of like leadership traits. What leadership traits do we want in our leaders? And when I say that our leaders, I mean our elected officials. Okay. But it really, it falls back on any leader, whether it's your leader of your party or the leader of your organization that you work for, or any other nonprofit, or the leader of your township, or the leader of your city, or whatnot. What leadership traits are important? And I think that what we don't seem to have, and I'm kind of thinking about setting up some sort of training about this, is what we don't seem to have is a solid expectation, or maybe we have the expectation, but it's not expressed in such a way that we make sure our leaders get it. This is how we expect you to behave. We expect you to be able to do X. We expect you to be able to do Y. We expect you to be able to do these things. And what are those things? Well, I guess, I can sort of babble here for a minute. I taught leadership Livingston for Cleary for 27 years. And I've got some notion. It wasn't just me. It was other leaders in the community too. But I was one of the longest serving. Frankly, I was the longest serving. And for 27 years, and I talked about leadership and different leadership traits and what made leadership and what was leadership exactly. And it is basically the traits and the ability to gain influence or to gain people's agreement to move along with you to accomplish a goal. Okay. So what kind of traits are there? Well, we can say transparency. That's good. We don't want our leaders to hide things from us. We want transparency. Once upon a time, it seemed like we wanted perfection from our electeds. I don't think first of all, social media has killed any kind of notion that any of us can hide anything. So I think we're desensitized to the silly stuff. So basically, what is it that we want? So transparency. Well, I think that's, we want them to tell us our intentions, and if something ever happened, then we need to know what it was and why. So so there's that. Then the next thing would be we can say honesty or integrity. What does that mean exactly? It means you do what you say you're going to do. It means you're not going to work on your own benefit. You're going to work for you're going to, serve the benefit of you're going to serve for the benefit of your constituents and not necessarily yourself. So that's kind of an integrity issue. But I think, my first statement there about doing what you said you were going to do, how hard is that? How hard is that? I'm seeing, I see it, you see it. I hear it all the time. I hear people call me and they go, oh my God, we elected this person, this man or this woman, and they said they were going to do this. They ran on this, but they're not doing this. They're doing that. Or they're doing exactly what they said they weren't going to do. Or they're going to, their predecessor, they said they ran complaining that their predecessor did X, and now they're doing X. How does that happen? And at what point, how do we get our, they get elected, now they're there for 4 years, and now they're just as bad, if not worse, than the guy or the woman that they just replaced. And so what do we do about that? How, what is that? I know that there's a lot of voter dissatisfaction out there that they thought this about the candidate, and then the candidate got elected, then the candidate started doing other things. So what do you do? How do you do it? Well, part of it is, I think from the party's perspective, we don't pick winners and losers here, but I think it's important that we help shape those expectations. And, when candidates are running as Republicans, we say, we need to bring them in and we need to say, these are the expectations. Your constituents want this. They vote Republican. They expect these very basic things. Now, we're not going to say you have to vote this way or that way on this particular vote. But for example, we can say some very simple things like, we expect you not to vote to raise taxes. We expect you not to, to vote to put all kinds of millages out there. We expect you to be good stewards of our money. We expect you to be transparent. We expect you to pass a balanced budget. There's certain things we expect of you. We expect that you will not do overreach. Government overreach is absolutely not is anti-Republican. It's what we would consider a liberal perspective, and yet we're seeing that. So what happens? You elect the person, now they're going to do exactly what they said they weren't going to do, and what do you do? What is it you do about it? Do you just be quiet and suck it up, Sally, and just wait for 4 years and hope somebody runs? I don't think that's the right way to go, because by that time the damage is done. So the first thing is, I think one of the things people can do, and I'm talking to all the people that have called me frustrated because their guy or their gal isn't doing what they said they were going to do. So first thing I would tell you to do is have a conversation with them if you feel comfortable. Look, I voted for you. I voted for you because you said X. You haven't done X. Why haven't you done X? I don't like it. This, another thing, that's obviously the first best thing to do. Sometimes an email helps. Sometimes getting lots of people to do an email. Showing up at board meetings saying, hey, you got to watch. You don't want to go into insult mode, but to say, look, we voted for you because of this, and you're not doing this. Why aren't you doing this? We expect you to start doing this. This is what you said you would do. People don't understand how important that 3 minutes you spend at a call to the public is. It is very powerful. I remember being on a school board, and it's easy to vote one way when nobody's there. But I remember the first time I had to take a tough vote, and I'm looking out at the audience, and I could see the people looking back at me, and I thought, Wow. This is difficult when you know they either want you or don't want you to do this. And it makes a big difference. So show up at your meetings. Here I am. Okay, can you hear me okay? I don't hear that. Wait. Can you hear me? Joni, can you hear me? Please let me know, yes or no. Can anybody hear me? Somebody please post. Just give me a thumbs up or text me. Okay. Yeah, okay. I see. I can see it now. So, okay. Thank you, Joni. All right. So sorry, I accidentally hit the button and kicked my phone out, which kicked my microphone out. But so, standing up at the call of the public and saying, this is not what I expected when I voted for you. And especially if there's more than you, gather friends, find out people that are like that, that all agreed. Look, we wanted you to do this. Why are you not doing this? That's really hard to answer when you get called out. Sometimes group emails, sometimes group coalitions on a Facebook, where you say, this is what's going on. We don't like it. That's all that stuff's very powerful. And I'm not saying go tear the person apart, but I have heard for so long about the rhinos, for example, the Republicans in name only that run as a Republican. And then as soon as they get there, they start voting like a Democrat. And that's got to stop. It's got to stop. We cannot allow that to take over. We cannot allow that to keep going. So, part of it from my perspective, I'm doing my part. I'm trying to, when I teach campaigns, I also kind of say there's a part 2 to that, which is, this is how you get governed. This is how you do it. This is what you're going to do. So for those that get elected, we're going to have right away, we're going to have a, kind of a class or a workshop or whatever. And and it's not something I'm going to necessarily teach. I may facilitate it, but I'm going to have some of those longtime conservative, elected officials, Wes Nakagiri, Jay Drick, Nick Fiani, that Frank Sample, that vote conservatively, and they don't give in to pressure, and they do what they said they were going to do when they ran. And how do you get that? People don't understand. They take the easy way out sometimes, and they don't understand. They're losing respect. They're losing support. And anybody that runs against them is going to win, because people are going to remember they don't like being people that are disingenuous. So pay attention out there. If you ran as a Republican, make sure you're voting like a Republican. And part of me says you better be able to defend your vote, but it's not just defending your vote. You can't defend it with your perspective only. It's got to be, if your constituents feel that you did government overreach, or that your vote to raise a tax. I remember there was a former person associated with city council that defended trying to raise the tax twice. He claimed to be a Republican, and there were letters produced that said, look, they're your signature asking for this tax increase. So if you're trying to get a tax increase from your fellow council members and from your public, how can you say that you're conservative? Because here you are trying to raise taxes, and there was, oh, we're just trying to get it back before, the way it was before this year or whatever. And it's not the point. The point is they were trying to raise taxes. So, so when I say defend it, I don't mean give an explanation. That's not defending it. Defending it is saying, oh no, that's a misunderstanding. This is what really happened. So if you can't defend it, if you can't, other than give your explanation for it, because a justification is not a defense. A justification is a justification. It's here's something that sounds good about what I did. If enough people find what you did is wrong, and all you're doing is justifying it, step back and ask yourself, all right, maybe I need to adjust this. Because, and the other thing is, and I say this very strongly, because there are people out there, and I don't mean necessarily, I'm not pointing out anything, in particular as far as electeds or anything, but there are people out there that listen to form a position, get new information about that position, and do one of two things. They either dig in and say, well, I believe what I believe, and never mind the new evidence or the new information that they didn't have or didn't take into consideration. But there are other people that assess that new information and say, okay, all right, well, that changes things. And those people will get my respect 100% of the time, 150% of the time. They will have my respect because, and that's the kind of person I want as an elected official. The people out there that you say, well, what about this? And they just dismiss it because it doesn't fit their narrative. That's it. I'm done. Because that's the way they're running. They're chucking out facts or data that doesn't fit their narrative, and they're accepting and amplifying or exaggerating the facts or data that implies or does fit their narrative. So that's a slippery slope. So I think in our electeds, we need people that are open-minded and will listen and understand that, oops, I just made a decision without knowing all this. Okay, so that's a sticky thing. And so, like I said, you want my respect, not that, that's not necessarily something people vie over, but I got to believe I'm like other people. If you want respect, that's something you need to do. You need to listen and understand, did I just get a new piece of information? And then you need to adjust your perspective because of that. If you believe that 80% of your people don't want X, and then you find that a poll or something shows you that that's only 40% that don't want X, and you stay with that first initial, process, then you've not listened at all. You've just dug in. So digging in is the cheap way out. Digging in doesn't do anybody any good, including you. So don't, so as far as the elected officials go, if they just dig in, then that's kind of useless. So people need to be able to adapt with information. And, I think some of them are worried about looking bad because they didn't know that in the first place. And that's an insecurity on their part. And again, that's another problem. So if you're an elected official and you're listening to this and you get new information, understand that it's going to be expected that you shift your position, and it's not going to look bad on you. It'll look bad on you if you don't. I think another trait that I see sometimes in leaders is they suddenly feel they're elected. Now they're the smartest guy in the room. So, again, nobody in particular, and nobody that I've dealt with recently, but it is, suddenly they're elected and now they're the smartest guy in the room and everybody else is beneath them. Okay. Like I said, I don't necessarily haven't dealt with anybody like that in a while, but I have dealt that way before, and it is unattractive. So, remember that, they call you a public servant for a reason. You're supposed to serve the public and not look down your nose at them. That's not a healthy thing to do in an elected official, and it's, I watched one time, it was a while ago, I watched a battle between, a new guard and an old guard, we'll say. And it was a while ago, and I saw it as a recording. So I wasn't there in person. And it was basically the old guard telling the new guard that the new guard shouldn't have done something. And the old guard said, well, I was the top vote getter and I had this many thousand voters tell me this is what they wanted me to do. And I remember thinking to myself, oh boy, was that a dumb thing to say. It might be that they had a good vote. So those people voted for what they thought you were going to do. They didn't vote for you. And my father was kind of a to the point, surprise, right? To the point kind of person. And he wasn't one to go around giving advice a lot. But when he did, he had a couple little statements that have stuck with me that are true. And one of them is this. I remember coming home from my first job, telling him all about the praise all I got from my bosses and how I could keep this job forever. And my father just kind of said, you need to know that a pat on the back is about 18 inches away from a kick in the ass. And I remember wondering what that meant. And I learned eventually it means you can't rest on your laurels like that. You do something and then you either keep doing it or, you're only as good as your last sale kind of thing. I mean, those thousands of people that voted for this person, those thousands of people will unvote them just as quickly if they start doing stupid stuff. So nobody better think that a bunch of votes means that you are gold. It doesn't mean that at all. It's easy enough to lose that. So, that's another trait. So listen, understand, don't be the smartest person in the room. Don't, listen, do what you say you're going to do. That's huge. What else do we need in our leaders? Whether they're elected or not. I'll be holding a new candidate class on Thursday. So what kind of things do I tell the candidates? Now, yeah, getting elected is part of it. Then you have to govern. And that's just as, here's another one. Don't fight with everybody. If you're one of these guys that wants to just have the fight, you need to win. You need to have the fight. Do everyone a favor. Get out of politics. Because all that's going to be is now you're going to do that in front of God and everybody else in your community, and people are going to see it. And there are people out there that actually thinks it makes them look smarter or tougher or better. It doesn't. It makes you look foolish. Stop fighting with everybody. Work with people. As far as, again, we're back to that public servant. You need to work with people. Your job is to make your community better. You can say that your job is to vote, your job is to do the budget, your job is to do all that stuff. But in the end, when you break it down to its basic and simplest component, your job is to make your community better. That's it. So run with dignity, run as a public servant, don't fight with people, learn how to solve problems with people. If you can't, we're going to be doing I've tried to do this conflict and it just keeps, I remember we got snowed out one day, but there's a conflict resolution technique training I do that I'm going to do. It just basically teaches you how to solve problems with people without it escalating. How do you just deal with it? Because, you have to, people that burn bridges are fools. They just are. You don't burn a bridge unless you really don't want that bridge again. But people that burn bridges, they find themselves so like on an island, and they don't have any avenues anymore. I've always said that he who learns to solve the most problems wins. That's it. Life is a series of how to solve problems, and the more tools you have to solve problems, the better you're off you are. So, okay, so there's some things that I think I'd like to see in my leaders. How about you? You find anything? I'd like to have this kind of as an ongoing topic where we just add to it a little bit. So, if you see this tomorrow or the next day or next week or whenever you look at it, pop back in on another podcast and kind of say, look, let's touch on this. Here's some more leadership traits you want. Either that or email me at chair@livingstonrepublicans.com. And that's Republicans with an S. And let me know what you think. I don't know that. I feel like, we can't necessarily pick our governor. We can vote for our governor, but we can't necessarily pick our governor, but we can pick our local leaders, and our local leaders are the ones that affect us the quickest, right? So these are the people that we need to hold accountable. These are the people that we need to work with. And these are the people we need to say, okay, we understand, this happened or that happened. Maybe we got off on the wrong track. Maybe we head down the wrong path, but let's right the ship here. Let's go to this. Let's start doing this. This is what we said, what we voted you in to do. This is what we'd like to start doing. So anyway, that's, my 2 cents on leadership and elected officials. And this is not to say we don't have good leadership here. We do. We have great leadership in Livingston County. But we've got our rough patches too. So, and I also see a whole bunch new coming, and I just want to head this off. I just don't want to see too many of them go down the wrong path here. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're in a situation you don't know how to handle it, or you don't know which way to go, talk to your constituents, talk to one of the Republican leadership. You can always talk to me. It's going to be confidential. I want what's best for every elected official we have. So we'll all help. There's people that will support you if you're trying to do the right thing. A la Candy Hovarder. I never say that right. Hovarder. That's it. Candy Hovarder. It always takes me 3 or 4 times, where she stood up and said, this is not how you spend taxpayer dollars, and she got support. People started showing up and helping her support that. And, things changed. So this is what happened. So, this is just kind of the seed for that. So let me know if there's a situation, if there's advocacy needed out there. We'll see what we can do to help get you some people, or we'll set you on a path to kind of starting that. I look back at Lana Tice. Lana Tice got to where she was. She was just, she didn't want them to be able to cut down. She didn't want the city to cut down trees, or the township to cut down trees without permission. So she fought it, and she learned a lot about government, and look what she did. So, this is how you start. And doesn't mean that if you go fight something, or you hold an elected official accountable, that you're going to, be a senator if you don't want to, but it means that you're educating yourself and you're making yourself a better community. So, all right, we're going to call it a night. Thanks for everybody that stuck in there. I promise next week we'll be back in the studio and we won't have these issues anymore. I won't be talking into my phone. So have a good night, everybody. And we'll see you next Tuesday. We have Carla Wagner with Axe My Tax, which I know that one's going to be a huge one. And then after that, we have, who else have we got coming? Somewhere down the line, Mike Cox signed up to be in here in July. I have Representative Gina Johnson coming in July. And they're going to, she's going to talk about all the reforms she's doing in the state. So we've got some really good shows coming. So stick around. So tomorrow night, don't forget, at the American Legion 141, free ballroom dancing classes. Come on up. It's going to be by 6:30. The classes start. We're going to get there maybe 5:45 or whatever. Grab it. They have great burgers and fries. So we're going to go grab a burger for dinner and then have a little fun Republican dancing. So, all right, guys, see you soon. Bye.